following court battles and family infighting, the coronation of King Misuzulu kaZwelithini is finally taking place next weekend. The Inkatha Freedom Party in KwaZulu-Natal is calling on the newly elected KZN Premier Nomusa Dube-Ncube to support the royal family during this transition. For more analysis on this, I'm joined by political analyst Fikile Vilakazi. Fikile, very good evening. Thanks for speaking to us. Now, King Misuzulu will be crowned in the next few days, but there seems to be still some angst within the royal family. Walk us through that.
Good evening, Hugo, to you, and good evening to viewers at home. We would remember that just after the passing of the King, kaZwelithini, there was a will that was made public to South Africans, following also the passing of his wife, uMantombi KwaZulu, who is the mother of what we now know as King Misuzulu. So what happened immediately after the passing of both parents, there was a will, or what other people call a letter, that stated that King Misuzulu needs to be the heir after the passing of kaZwelithini. And of course, what then transpired immediately after that, when Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi was facilitating a process of coronation immediately after the passing of Queen Mantombi, then there was ill fighting amongst members of the royal family, others saying that King Misuzulu is not the rightful heir of the throne, but other members of the royal family and other children should actually be the rightful heirs of the throne. And of course, one of the names being Princess Magate, and there are many others. So that has been a battle of contestation since then. And of course, you also have one of the wives of the king who was married not necessarily according to customary law, but also was married legally, where they sign a marriage certificate under a court of law, and claiming then that because of the kind of a marriage contract that she shares with the late king, she needs to be given the rightful heirship to the king's estate. And of course, the matter was taken to court, and that is what has been a point of contestation since then.
Now, you talk about Prince Makade, and there's also the impending threat of him entering the cattle kraal at the weekend, which obviously is an important ceremony. What is the impact of this should he go ahead and do that?
Hugo, there's huge implications if King Magade continues this weekend with a ritual that is called Ukungena Esibayeni, which means entering the kraal, because the kraal in KwaZulu is a sacred place. It is a place of worship. It is a place of communication with ancestors. In this particular case, it would be seen as a symbol of some form of coronation that he will be doing, which will be highly problematic, because King Misuzulu is also meant to be coronated the following weekend. And why this is going to be problematic, Hugo, is because it's something that has happened before in the nation of KwaZulu with King Ushaga. If we go back to the times of King Shaga, and we remember the battles of King Shaga and his brothers, right, and how he actually ascended the throne. Just briefly to go back to that story, King Shaga in 1816, actually, he was a son of King Senzangakhona, and he was born out of wedlock, in a sense that, Queen Unandi became pregnant with Ushaga, and of course, people were saying that the relationship is not a formal one. And it's a long story. She had to run away, but Shaga was grown by the clan of the Mtetwas. But then he grew up, and Uskujana, who was King Shaga's brother, similarly as you see the battle between Smagate and Misuzulu, then was said to be an heir of the throne, but King Shaga eventually killed Uskujana and taking over the throne. And the manner and the methodology that King Shaga used is the same methodology that we are seeing Princess Magate wanting to do. What happened is that King Shaga entered the kraal as King Uskujana wanted to, was being coronated, and of course he murdered him. And the rest is the history that we know, how he then became this very cruel ruler of Isizwe Samazulu, in terms of the eyes of many, So that is what then would make this kind of an act problematic, because we do not know whether it is an omen, it is a case that is taking us to that kind of a situation where it may revert back to the kinds of violences that one has seen over Isizwe Samazulu under the forceful leadership of Nkosi Ushaga. And it's an omen, Hugo, when two kings enter a kraal in that manner, which is what is likely to happen here. It can be signaling a case for the royal family, and also because of this story that I've just told you. It is said that in terms of symbolisms of some of the rituals that are supposed to be performed for the passing of the king, or after the passing of the king, as we've seen with Inkosi kaZwelithini, there's a ritual that is called Intambo, right? Intambo, which is a ritual of cleansing. You're cleansing the spears and the weapons of a king as a symbol of saying, now we are burying the darkness that has engulfed us as a royal family. We are now bringing light. We are moving forward, right, with healing, with unity, and rebuilding of Isizwe Samazulu. But what happened with Nkosi Ushaga, it seems, in the manner that he died, because he was killed by his half-brother Utingane, and because he didn't have an heir, right, because the person who's supposed to do Intambo is an heir of the king. His umkondo, his weapon, was never really cleansed. So it could be that maybe that is the case that is sitting within Isizwe Samazulu. Many analysts and many healers in varied spaces actually are saying that in terms of prophetic messages, Hugo, perhaps the Zulu nation need to go back there and do Intambo, Nkosi Ushaga, King Shaga, and make sure that the spear that murdered King Shaga also is being cleansed, so that the Zulu kingdom, the Zulu royalty, does not go through that similar process again. So now we are here. Fast forward to Kings Magate and King Misuzulu, seeing a similar pattern. It also happened somewhere down the line, with the King Cetshwayo, and his brothers as well, and eventually he had to make sure that his brother is being murdered, Umbuyazi. So now we see this thing repeating itself within the kingdom of KwaZulu. What does it mean? Could it be that the kingdom has got certain rituals that it is owing that it needs to do to avoid the contestation of the kraal? Because the kraal is a sacred space of the Zulu kingdom, and if the kraal is violated constantly and consistently in the manner that is probably going to be violated this weekend again.
Well, Fikile, let me ask you this. Obviously, it must be causing grave headaches for certainly many members of the Zulu royal family. Now, is this kraal not guarded at all? Or is there any way of stopping Prince or King Simakade, as you've stated, from entering the kraal over the next few days before the actual coronation that's intended?
Well, the Zulu nation has got a prime minister, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, right? And the prime minister usually is seen then as a voice of reason and as a figure that should be able to intervene during times of disputes of this nature, and of course also defend and protect the kraal. And now in democratic South Africa, with the leadership of traditional leaders that we've got, you also have the House of Traditional Leaders that has got, leadership that also plays that kind of a role. So clearly the kraal should be protected. It shouldn't be violated in these ways that it might happen. It shouldn't be a place of play, for lack of a better word. But we have seen, of course, even during the time when King Misuzulu was when the will was read, Prince Umdana Gapindangene was speaking there, but people were defying his authority. People, members of the royal family, were defying also his presence as a prime minister, which then tells you that as much as the kraal is supposed to be protected, but he may no longer be really commanding that kind of authority to be able to stop these kinds of things from happening. He's tried so many times. He's tried to also say to the South African public and to the Zulu Kingdom that let us ignore all these, he calls them rebels, all these rebels that are trying to tell us that we do not have a king, because we do have a king. There's one king, there's one heir, which is King Misuzulu, but still he doesn't have really that strong a voice of authority anymore like he used to have before. And the House of Traditional Leaders similarly has not really played a stronger role in terms of making sure that the kraal is protected as a sacred space of the Zulu Kingdom, which is a place really of communicating with spirit guides, right, with ancestors and ancestresses, amadlozi. So you don't want to defile umsamo, you don't want to defile a sacred kraal, isbaya, in these particular ways. And again, then you come, because we are living in a democratic arrangement, right, even though there is this kingdom where we have democratic institutions, and like the Premier and perhaps the cabinet of KwaZulu-Natal, that is expected to then be able to play some particular role to intervene in assisting the royal family to hold its disputes together, perhaps towards an agenda of unity and recovering of itself. But we know, Hugo, that the royal family has got more power even than the Premier. In KwaZulu-Natal, we've seen over time that the Premiers subject themselves to the king, to the power of the king and to the power of the queens. So they don't really have much leeway to be able to assist the royalty to reorder, to reorganize itself and to heal itself in ways that the community desire.
So from what you suggest, Fikile, it's almost a wait and see for us over the next few days to analyze what it is that actually happens. But it also paves way for my next question. And the IFP has called for the newly elected KZN Premier to provide continuous support for the Zulu King and household. What is the reason behind this message? Does it suggest that there have been instances where the Zulu King and the royal household has not been given the necessary support? Or is this just an affirmation of expectation in her new role as Premier?
Well, Hugo, I mean, we would know by now that there has been a lot of outcry on the public domain that the outgoing Premier Fikile Vilakazi was not seen to be supporting the royal family in the manner that people expecting him to do. His cabinet was not really visible and present in supporting the royal family to sort out the disputes that we are seeing all now in the public domain. So perhaps the call from Inkatha Freedom Party is coming from that place that says we've seen a number of cabinets that have come and gone who have not been able to support and rebuild the royal family and the Shembe Church and so on. So we would like to appeal to this leadership to please consider self-correcting and playing a much more present and visible role in the process of healing the royal family. Because you must remember, Hugo, the royal family is a very important part of the KwaZulu. Isizwe Zulu sees the royal family as one of the pillars of healing for the province, because it holds traditions and cultures and ways of being AmaZulu over time, really dating back to the 1600s. And
Fikile, I'm afraid we're going to have to call time on this conversation. It's been absolutely great to talking to you, and we thank you so much for coming onto the show. That was a political analyst, Fikile Vilakazi. Now, still to come,